It's important that inmates feel safe to report incidents of sexual violence. Inmates have the opportunity to report any sexual harassment or abuse in different ways, including telling any officer or supervisor, putting in an anonymous request slip, calling the PREA hotline number that is posted by the facility phones, or telling a family member or friend who can call or report for them. Inmates can also call a confidential community sexual assault advocate who can talk to them over the phone or meet in person to guide them through the reporting process.
They can report it to anyone, and anyone that they report it to then has the responsibility of reporting it to their supervisor or the PREA coordinator, such as myself, to be investigated and looked into.
They can put a request in that's a paper copy. Hey, I need to speak with you at such and such date, instead of going up and reporting it because you're nervous or embarrassed by it.
We're not going to use their name in a report. We're going to talk to them and try to keep things as confidential as possible with still getting them help that they need. That's
how a lot of these allegations come forth. They come through a request slip, or just information comes through and we meet with them, instead of them coming up and talking about their business with ears everywhere.
As correction officers become adept at recognizing sexual violence in their facilities, they know that reporting plays a key role in preventing future incidents.
When we see this happen, we usually tell the two individuals involved to lock in immediately, separate them. They don't know what's going on. I say, you just need to lock in. I'm giving you an instruction, please follow it. And they'll go lock in, and they'll remain there. And then I call the sergeant down because we would need to fill out a pre-assessment checklist. The sergeant will usually meet individually with each of the inmates, and it'll be recorded on a lapel cam, so for documentation. If it was something misinterpreted by the officer, at least it's been documented and it's been cleared. It's protecting yourself as an officer, but it's also protecting the inmates, in case one of them was put in a situation where maybe they didn't speak up for themselves.
It's our job to see that, hey, something's happened, but it's not our job to really investigate it and say whether or not it's appropriate or not. It's always going to be appropriate to report it. If you are ever second guessing, oh, do I need to report that to my supervisor? Report it. Log it in your logbook. You're going to hear throughout the academy over and over and over, logbook, 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 document everything. That comes with documenting, but also telling your supervisor about it. So if you're ever unsure whether or not a comment or a gesture or something you hear may not be appropriate or may be appropriate, just report it.
You may ask, if sexual assaults are common, why aren't they reported more?
There are many reasons that survivors choose not to report or even speak out at all. And that can range from the fear of being judged or not believed. When you open up like that, that opens a whole area for people to ask you questions and really dig deep, and which can be very traumatic for people. And the not believing part is also huge, and that ranges from family members to law enforcement. If they've had a negative experience with law enforcement in the past, then that's going to deter them from wanting to go back and tell the most vulnerable part of their life. The worst part, the most traumatic aspect of their life. They are already fearful that they're not going to be believed. So what's the point?
There's a huge code of silence. It's widespread in correctional facilities, and a lot of times there's that taboo against snitching, and so people tend to not share those experiences or not report them, which can make the experience of sexual violence even more isolating.
They may feel too scared to report. They might feel ashamed. They might feel embarrassed. They don't want anybody to know that this has happened. They might feel like it's their fault. Again, that victim blaming of, well, if I wasn't in jail, this wouldn't have happened to me, right? That culture of victim blaming. But they also might fear that they're going to get in trouble somehow for reporting it, especially if it's a staff person that has assaulted them and they're worried about the repercussions of that. They might be scared of the perpetrator because they're living with the perpetrator. There's all kinds of reasons that they might not want to report.
A lot of inmates have voices. They just get intimidated. They get intimidated by COs. They get intimidated by other inmates not to speak, because you're labeled as a rat. But the thing is if you just speak up and just be like, no, I'm not going to take this anymore, I'm gonna do something about it. I don't want to be treated like this anymore.
It's very important to not only say something but report it, because you may not always be there when that person is. And if you see they're, violating an inmate's rights, that definitely should be handled, file a grievance or a report, as well as talk to whoever's doing it.
There used to be a perception of criminality that saw sexual violence as part of prison life. Thanks to correction officers and community advocates working under PREA laws, this is no longer the case.
We're not saying that people shouldn't be incarcerated for crimes that they commit, but being sexually assaulted should not be a part of their sentence. And so understanding and excusing are two very different things. We're not saying that they shouldn't be incarcerated for their drug use, but understanding that they may have a drug history because of past or prior trauma, including sexual violence, sex trafficking, and sexual abuse.
We're not here to punish an inmate. Their punishment is being incarcerated, and that's it. The judge has given them a sentence. Now our job is to make sure that they have a safe environment to live in.
The inmates in the facility are members of your community. At some point in time, they're going to get released. Do you want them to be a broken person that, experience the worst trauma of their life within inside a correctional facility, or do you want them to come out, rehabilitated and try to be a productive member?
In the past, correction officers may have banded together in a code of silence. Instead, today, most correction officers have turned that around to a community with pride in a shared code of accountability to each other and high professional standards.
We all don't like dirty cops. So if we know another one of our correctional officers are doing something that they shouldn't be doing, more than likely it's going to get reported because it gives bad name on us. We don't want Kennebec County correction officer charged with gross sexual assault.
I'm not above the law, and no one I work with is ever above the law.
It's like our duty to make sure everyone's safe. Us as corrections officers, we're the police, and the inmates are the public. They're we're their servants. We're public service. This is no different than on the streets.
We're positive role models and in these people's lives. A female prisoner has experienced all sorts of sexual assaults from men in the past. Their whole life is filled with trauma. They don't trust authority coming in because they're arrested by authority, and that's what they've been dealing with their entire life. Just showing up to work as a male supervising a female population and being a professional and treating them fair you're already creating a difference in their life. So this is almost the start of their rehabilitation when they come in.
As a role model, you have a good chance to be able to help people and make them feel better about themselves and help them through a situation that they have made a mistake, but you can come out better at the other end.